today. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of Dacorum Borough Council's Development Management Committee. My name is Councillor Jankowski, and I'm the chair of the committee. Vice chair of the committee is Councillor Guest. Other members of the committee are Councillors Bromham, Durrant, Hemel, Hobson, Madden, Patterson, Riddick, Smith-Wright, Symington, and Williams. There are a number of council officers in attendance this evening, and these are Head of Development Management Philip Stanley, Case Officers Madison Graham, Robert Freeman, Heather Eady, Legal Officer Adele Stapleton, and Corporate and Democratic Support Officer Kaylee Johnston. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, but if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the ground floor and assemble outside. If the meeting is likely to be extended, there may be a comfort break during the meeting around 9 p.m. Before we start, please mute or turn off your mobile phones. Given we have public speakers present only for items C and D, we'll be moving the agenda around slightly this evening to bring those items forward. Towards the end of the meeting, Philip is also going to provide a short briefing for members on the National Scheme of Delegation. The first item on the agenda this evening is to approve the minutes of the last meeting held on Thursday, 21st of May, 2026. These minutes have been circulated previously. Are these minutes agreed? Okay. Those minutes are approved. I will sign the hard copy minutes later this evening. The next item on the agenda is to receive any apologies for absence. I understand we have apologies from Councillor Hemel, Councillor Durrant, and Councillor Smith-Wright, and apologies to Councillor Juris, I believe is standing in for Councillor Williams, who sent apologies. Are there any other apologies of absence to be noted? The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Okay, there we go. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Please can I remind members to declare any disclosable pecuniary or other interests at the beginning of the relevant planning application. Any member who declares an interest will be allowed to stay in the meeting but will not have the right to vote. I also want to remind members that vote on that item. Is my microphone working for everyone else? Is it cutting in and out? We'll see how it goes. Next item on the agenda is public participation. I'd like to remind members and the public about the rules regarding public participation. We have a number of members of the public who have registered to speak, and the list has been circulated. Our normal practice is to bring forward applications where a speaker is present. You'll be invited to address the meeting when the item you have registered to speak on is to be discussed. Normal procedure and rules in respect of times to speak will apply. Time per speaker is 3 minutes, and ward councillors will be entitled to their own 5 minutes. Speakers in objection to the officer recommendation are taken first. Time will be displayed on the screen, and times will be strictly enforced. Members of the public will not be entitled to take part in the discussion that follows public speakers. Any other persons who are viewing or listening to the meeting are welcome to do so, but they are not entitled to take an active part in the meeting, and microphones and cameras should remain turned off at all times. I have the discretion to remove any member of the public from the meeting if they interrupt, try to engage in the discussion, or are abusive. Each application, the officer will present the report to the committee. Members who have registered to do so will be called to speak. Following this, questions taken from the committee, along with statements and comments for debate. There will be a vote among councillors which will represent the decision of this committee. Moving on to item 5, yes, Councillor Lewis.
I'm just going to speak with regard to item 5B, my intention to remove myself from the sitting now into the public benefits. For that item, Joe will speak, and then I will return to after the vote and the item has been concluded.
Understood. Thank you. The first planning application is item, as I said, we're moving the agenda around slightly. So the first item we'll take is item 5C on the agenda, and is for retention of existing public. Okay, apologies. We are going to take a short break while we reset the system so that those online can hear. Right, apologies about the pause and the delay. We'll start where we left off, which is item 5C, which is for the retention of existing public house and construction of one 3-bedroom dwelling. Do any members wish to declare an interest? And Councillor Riddick.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in as much that this particular site application lies within my particular ward. And I've had no contact with the applicant or their agents at all, and I come to the meeting with an open mind. Now,
Thank you.
Does that mean that I can't comment or vote?
Check with.
Missed what your introduction was breaking up.
Any views on? Whether Councillor Riddick can take part in discussion and vote. Yep, if you're happy to ensure you're coming with an open mind, then we have no objection.
I'm prepared to listen to everything first. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, Chair, I don't see how Councillor Riddick can have an open mind given the information he's put on this and the other one which he's called in, where he's clearly strongly opposed to the application. So I don't see how he can now have an open mind and disregard what he's already written.
Can I add to that it was referred by Councillor Riddick. That's the reason it's in this, that it's being discussed this evening.
If you're happy to, suggestion is that you don't take part in the vote, Councillor Riddick. If you'd be happy to, the suggestion is that you don't take part in the vote, given that you've called the application in and expressed a view.
So you're saying not take part in the vote?
Yeah.
But can I comment at the end?
It's the legal advice, but yeah, you can comment.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Perfect. Registered to speak on item 5C, I have Sam Fuller and Jake Russell. Sam Fuller speaking in objection and Jake Russell speaking in support. I will now ask the case officer, Heather Eady, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, actually, I'll start just by reading out what the application is for. So the application is for the retention of the existing pub and construction of one 3-bed dwelling on land to the side of the existing public house and the creation of a new vehicular access off Bourne End Lane, associated parking, hard and soft landscaping, and the reconfiguration of the pub car park. So the site comprises Grade 2 listed pub, which is the anchor, with its associated beer garden and parking area, and the site falls within the green belt. Planning permission was previously sought for the construction of 2 3-bed dwellings on land to the side/rear of the pub, with associated parking and amenity space, and to reconfigure the pub car park. Permission was refused by members at a previous committee, with the main concerns relating to the impact of the development on the listed building, both in terms of physical impacts and economic impacts. There were also concerns about the character and appearance of the development, and on the grounds that poor standards of residential amenity would be secured for future occupiers of the new residential dwellings. So the current proposal seeks permission for an amended scheme, and it proposes the construction of a single 3-bed dwelling with associated parking and amenity space, and the reconfiguration of the pub car park. So the application is at committee due to a call-in request received from Councillor Riddick. The main concerns raised relate to parking, the principle of the development, and that the current scheme does not overcome the previous reasons for refusal. So this slide just shows the existing site plan. So at the top of the plan, you can see the Grade 2 listed pub. You can also see the pub car park. And at the bottom of the plan, you can see 1 Bourne End Lane. So one of the concerns that has been raised relates to parking and whether there's sufficient parking retained for the existing pub. So as you can see on the screen, the pub is at the top, and you can see the arrangement of parking. So at the moment, it is an informal arrangement, so the level of parking is subject to change. But in practice, based on Google Street View images, we can see that approximately 16 cars would be parked in the car park at any one time, and this is shown on the current plan. And as part of the current scheme, it would be 18 parking spaces that would be secured for the pub. So this slide just shows a comparison plan. So you can see the previously refused scheme on the left and the current scheme on the right. So in terms of the main differences, so you can see there's a reduction in the number of residential units proposed. So in the first image, you can see there's 2 residential dwellings proposed, and in the current scheme, there's just the 1. You've also got alterations to the access arrangements. So in the first image, you can see that there would be a shared access between the pub and the new dwellings, whereas under the current scheme, there would be separate access arrangements for both. We've also got amended parking arrangements. So in the previously refused scheme, there were 16 parking spaces retained for the pub, whereas under the current scheme, there would be 18 spaces. And there's also a reduction to the area of beer garden proposed for redevelopment, which you can also see in both plans. So this slide just shows the existing and proposed street scene plan, and this is looking at the development from Bourne End Lane. So in the second image, where the arrow is, you can see the new dwelling, and you can see that it would match the height of one Bourne End Lane, despite being sited on slightly higher ground levels than the pub. This slide shows the existing and proposed street scene plan when looking at the development from London Road. So you can see in the second image at the bottom, where the arrow is where the new dwelling would be. And you can see it would be viewed against the backdrop of one Bourne End Lane. So this slide just shows the proposed elevation plan. So you've got the front elevation on the left and the side elevation facing one Bourne End Lane on the right. And you can see there'd be a mix of materials and detailing just to break up the bulk of the development. This slide just shows the rear and side elevations. And then we've got the proposed floor plans. So you can see the new dwelling would be a 3-bed dwelling, and all habitable rooms would be served by a window. So the next few slides are just site photos. So this is views of the site looking towards London Road, and you can see the pub quite clearly in that first image. This slide just shows further views of the car park, and again you can see the pub in both images. This slide is just further views of the car park. And this slide shows further views of the car park, but looking towards Bourne End Lane. So you can see one Bourne End Lane in that second image, and where the fencing is at the back of the image is where the pub garden is. And the approximate location of the new dwelling would be next to one Bourne End Lane, which you can see in that second image. This slide just shows views from London Road. So you can see the anchor in the first image and the pub car park. And in the second image, you can see the new residential development of Chalk Row. And in this slide, you can see photos of properties along Bourne End Lane. And the first image shows one Bourne End Lane. So in summary, the development is concluded to be acceptable in principle, amounting to the redevelopment of grey-belt land. It's considered the reduction in residential units is sufficient to lessen the physical harm of the development to the setting of the pub, and the proposed reduction to the beer garden and reconfiguration of the pub car park would not be harmful to the viability of the pub. And we've also received a statement from the tenant and operator of the anchor to confirm support for the proposal. So the site is considered sufficient in scale to accommodate a new dwelling and retain sufficient parking for the pub. And it's concluded that the proposed mitigation measures are sufficient to ensure that good standards of residential amenity are secured for future site occupiers. It's therefore recommended that the application be approved as per the recommendation set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. I'll now invite speakers to address the meeting. I have Sam Fuller speaking an objection. Do you want to test your microphone is working? And you'll have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. If you press the button on the right. Should.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Sorry,
When
Bill,
you're ready,
give
when
me 2
you are.
seconds.
You've got 3 minutes.
Okay. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here to object on the application. Although the scheme has been reduced from 2 dwellings to 1, it does not overcome the fundamental problems that led to the concern with the previous application. The same constrained site is still being carved up. The same public house car park is still being reconfigured. The same operational issues remain, and crucially, the revised proposal still fails to properly address disabled parking, delivery access, pub servicing, highway safety, heritage impact, and the long-term viability of the anchor as a community facility. The application now proposes one 3-bedroom dwelling with 3 residential parking spaces and claims that the pub will retain 18 parking spaces. But this is a numerical argument, not a practical one. The question is not simply whether 18 bays can be drawn on a plan. The question is whether the anchor will have a safe, accessible and functional car park for customers, staff, disabled visitors, deliveries, servicing and events. When, at what time were the car park photographs taken? Clearly when the pub was not occupied. First, there remains no satisfactory answer on the parking and disabled parking. The earlier refusal and objections raised concerns about the adequacy of the pub car park. The proposal does not show true reflection of the car park use. The application says there will be 18 pub spaces, but this does not demonstrate a properly designed, accessible disabled bay servicing the public house. For a community pub, that's a serious omission. The anchor serves elderly residents, disabled customers, and people with mobility needs. They require more than a general car parking space. That conflicts with the objectives of the core strategy policy CS8. Second, the issue of deliveries and servicing remains unresolved. A working pub needs regular deliveries, beer, food, cellar supplies, refuse collection, maintenance vehicles, and occasional larger vehicles for events. The previous concerns included whether the remaining car park would be sufficient for deliveries. That issue has not disappeared simply because one house has been removed for the proposal. The new layout still formalises and constrains the pub car park. It removes flexibility. It introduces the dwelling, private parking, new boundaries, and new access arrangement to the pub. The applicant has not provided a convincing servicing strategy on how delivery vehicles will safely enter, unload, turn, and leave while the pub is in normal use. Third, the proposal introduces a new vehicular access of Bourne End Lane that creates a new highway issue. Bourne End Lane is already constrained and close to London Road Junction. The application is simply not adding one house. It's just adding another access point and another layer of vehicle movements into an already difficult corner site.
Thank you, Sam. That's 3 minutes.
That went very quickly.
Speaking in support, we have Jake Russell. Your 3 minutes starts when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. I think I just wanted to start by saying it wasn't long ago that I was here previously in support of the other application, and I think what we have tried and I think succeeded to do is to very carefully listen and take on board not only what members said at the last meeting, but also what members of the public have said to the owners of the public house, Red Oak Taverns, and we've prepared a revised scheme, which I think your officer has very succinctly summarised the key components of, so I won't go over those. But I think the key points to pick up on are in response to the gentleman next to me, the revised parking layout, where you've seen the photographs of the existing car park at the pub. It's a mess. That won't change. There's no plans for that to change unless this scheme goes ahead. And I think the revised parking layout, it's been tracked. It's been put in front of the Highway Authority, and the Highway Authority are completely happy with that, as they are with the proposed new access. The servicing vehicle, the pub dray, that's been tracked as well. That's been put in front of the Highway Authority, and again, they're happy with that. So I think an increase of 2 parking spaces based on the 16 that are currently available, plus the resurfacing of the car park, plus the marking out of the bays, plus the soft landscaping that's proposed, all of that obviously enhances the offering of the pub, certainly doesn't detract from it. I think one of the other key points I wanted to bring out was, the perception that there will be an adverse impact on the pub. Well, for the reasons I've just mentioned, there will actually be a level of enhancement to the setting of the pub as a result of the scheme. But equally, I think the previous scheme resulted in, between 10 to 20% of the beer garden being lost. Now it's 0.8% of the beer garden being lost. As I say, I think hopefully, members, you can see that the applicant has thought hard about the feedback we had on the previous scheme. We've come back with a revised scheme which responds positively to all of those concerns raised, and I think that is the essence of good planning. It's to respond to issues as they arise, and it's to respond to the thoughts and feelings of stakeholders when they arise. So, yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening, and I would politely encourage you to follow the recommendation of your expert officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you for keeping to time. We'll now move to questions and debate. Are there any members who wish to speak or ask a question? No points of clarification, questions? Nothing? Councillor Riddick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As nobody's got any comments, I'd just like to say, having listened to it all and studied the revised application, nothing has fundamentally changed from the first one, which was refused. And the reasons for that were clearly outlined on page 85 of the report at 4.2. There were 4 very, very strong reasons which have still not been addressed. And the other thing is car parking. Car parking, which has been proposed for the pub, is not correct. They have not provided any disabled parking positions whatsoever. Now, commercial properties such as this, they do have to provide a minimum of 2. The pub next door, the White Horse, does have 2 designated spaces. Now, they should be shown on the plan, and they're not. They're not even mentioned to be provided. But that's as far as I want to go, because I think it's very clear in the report. They say on page 85, fundamentally, nothing has changed from the previous refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Yeah, in the comments, there's one about a low voltage power cable.
Sorry, Councillor Riddick, your mic's still on.
Oh.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Bowman.
From UK Power Networks advises a very specific search, because there's sounds as though they're fairly confident that there is what they call low voltage. Most of us probably think of as rather high voltage. And should that not be a condition in the planning, in the proposed granting of the planning permission?
Heather, do you want to come in on that? Or is it a rhetorical question?
My view is that it should be an informative for the applicant to be aware of. I don't think it would meet the tests to have that as a condition.
Councillor Bowman, do you have a secondary?
No, that sounds, I think even the fact that they're informed puts some obligation on them, so thank you.
Councillor Hobson?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify whether the provision of disabled parking spaces is a material planning reason for, material planning. Thank you. Just as advice, because it's been mentioned a few times.
Yeah.
It's material to us.
Heather, did you have a...
Thank you.
Yeah, so it is a material planning consideration, and what we were just discussing is whether we could look at adding a condition to get a formal parking plan, because I'm sure the applicant would be open to increasing the width of one of the spaces to make it suitable for a disabled space. But that is something we could secure via condition if members felt that that was necessary.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful and give clarity, depending obviously on other people's thoughts. The only other thing, if I may, Chair, to follow up with, So see, the biggest concern, really material concern, is around the potential damage to the grade 2 listed building, particularly given that there's the new development next door. But it's unclear from reading and rereading the feedback from the conservation design team whether they are pro or against it. They've kind of, so I'm struggling a little bit to understand, because if it was clear that it was definitely going to damage the asset, the heritage asset, then I would be a bit cautious. But I'm not clear to what extent it is, given that we don't have our 5-year plans, etc., etc. So this is quite a tricky one for me to navigate. Thank you.
So no works are actually proposed to the pub itself. The conservation team have to consider whether there's any harm to the setting.
That's what I meant, sorry.
Yeah. So they've considered that there is harm, but that harm is at the lowest level. So then what we're required to do is weigh that against the public benefits of the scheme. So as I covered earlier, resurface the car park, mark out the spaces, add some soft landscaping. And as you were seeing from the images, the car park is currently in a really poor state of repair. So I consider that to be a significant benefit, alongside obviously the provision of housing, land supply situation. So it's the combination of those benefits that is sufficient to outweigh that limited harm that's been raised by the conservation team.
Thank you. Councillor Madden.
Thanks. Actually, Claire's kind of asked my question for me, but listening to a presentation, you said that there are going to now be 18 spaces where historically there have been 16. Is that right? Yeah. So if it would be possible to lose one to make 17 and make 3 into 2 disabled spaces, that would be my only issue. And if they could do something and formalise a parking plan, I'd like to propose that as a recommendation.
Thank you. We'll park that for the moment. But Councillor Symington. No, guest, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I see one of the reasons for refusal last time was economic impact on the pub, but did I hear correctly that the tenant has no objection to this application?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, she actually supports the scheme.
Thank you for clarifying that. One of the other reasons for refusal last time was on adverse impact on the residential amenity of future occupiers from noise from the pub and beer garden. So how is it proposed to mitigate those?
So the application is supported by a noise impact assessment, which outlines a package of mitigation measures, some of which include the installation of an acoustic fence, glazing, specific glazing to deal with noise. There's also a ventilation system.
So one of the other grounds for refusal last time was the bulk and massing, which that was the lower end of the harm scale, but that has been reduced by the reduction in units. Which you may wish to park.
Thank you. We've already had a proposal in Councillor Madden, but I'm happy to take you as a seconder. So yes, Councillor Symington.
Thank you. Heather, thank you for that, and also to the members of the public who've attended. I think we've covered quite a lot of the points. I just wanted, and Councillor Guest has covered some of my questions with reference to the assertion that it's not different from the previous application. It appears to me, and maybe I'm missing something, but we have one house instead of 2, and we have a separate access as well, which I would imagine, A, is a benefit to the house, and secondly, enables the pub to have more parking if they don't have to give up a bit of the fence line to allow access. So I think it's a very positive development or a move forward from the last planning application. If this is refused, presumably, you know, it's been scaled back to one house. It's not a particularly large house and it has a separate access. So would that be on the basis that actually, and I think this was alluded to in a previous question, that there is just such significant harm that no development can take place on that site? If you felt that the harm was in terms of the heritage asset harm, then yes, you would need to come to the view that the harm to the setting of the heritage asset is not outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme. Okay, so that, leaving that aside, so that would be one reason. And the other reason I think you've already, is to do with parking. So we've covered disabled parking. In terms of total parking, are public houses, is there a prescribed number of spaces that have to be allocated in the same way as we have for houses that, you know, in town centres, for example? Sorry, we're just going to double check the parking standards document, but when I made my assessment, I had to base it on the existing situation. It's obviously an informal layout, so it is difficult to work out exactly how many parking spaces there are, because it will fluctuate depending on how people park on any given day. So we have gone by Google Street View images to work out an approximate way that people would use the pub car park at the moment to then work out how many spaces would need to be retained. But again, it's already been mentioned, but the tenant is happy that the current amount of spaces would be sufficient and wouldn't harm the viability of the pub.
Councillor Doris.
Thank you very much. In one of the pictures, in one of the slides that you showed, it was, I think, the car park. But in your report, it says that it's tarmac. It looked to me as though it was actually white, as though it was concrete, and it didn't look in very great shape. Is it, if you like, a formal car park, or is it a piece of land that's been used over a number of years as a place to park cars? And also, in terms of the application, is there any definitive statements that say or give an indication of the usage of the car park an average week? Is it always full overflowing, or is there various spaces around? How well used is the car park, to put it simply?
So I don't have any specific details on that. In terms of the current car park and the state of the car park now, I think it was fully tarmacked, and it's just where it's worn away that you can see in the pictures. And that's why I mentioned it's currently in a poor state of repair. In terms of the use of the car park, I don't have specific details on how, what the numbers are like. And we obviously have to just take a view depending on all the details that we have. And obviously, because it's an informal arrangement, it is going to fluctuate. So yeah, we have to make an assessment based on the details that we have.
Thank you, Heather. Councillor Doris, do you have a follow-up? No? You're secondary? No. Perfect. Councillor Patterson.
I visited the pub yesterday to look at the site, and it's just been raining pretty heavily. So I parked in the car park, and it was mainly puddles. And I would guess that when it does rain a lot, then there's very ad hoc parking there. And lots of people might possibly want to park elsewhere. As for the development, I don't have any particular problem with that. I think it's modest now in scale. It's got a different exit onto Bourne End Lane. It affects the pub garden very slightly. And the only concern I did have, which was answered earlier on, that there are now mitigating circumstances for the benefit of the anticipated residents or the new house. So they won't be disturbed so much by what's happening on the garden. I mean, really, the car park ought to be reconfigured, but that's not really a matter for this application. It's a matter for the owners to decide whether they want to bring it up to a better standard. Which is what I would do, I must admit. However, as far as the development itself concerns, I'm happy to support, and I'll certainly vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Any final questions, points for discussion? Should we move to the vote? No, if there's nothing,
Sorry, can I just clarify the additional condition that I think members are seeking to add? So this would be a condition for a parking plan to be submitted and approved. I just wanted to double check, is it to ensure the provision of a disabled space or two disabled spaces? And obviously, that there are, by widening the spaces to create disabled space, it will either result in the loss of one space, but it would become 17 rather than 18, but still more than the 16 that is being discussed. Or one space could be achieved through a slight nibbling of the soft landscaping. So overall, the site can definitely accommodate disabled spaces. I just wanted to be clear whether members wanted the condition to ensure the provision of a single disabled space or two disabled spaces.
to Madeline.
Thanks. On the basis that there's provision for 18 spaces, and you calculated that at the moment there are probably 16, I think that we should be looking at two disabled spaces, so losing one to make, and using that one as the width for the extra width for the other two. That would be my preferred option as I'm proposing it, and I thought I'd get in there quickly with that.
Thank you.
So the condition would be along the lines of the submission and approval prior to the first occupation of a parking plan, to ensure provision of two disabled parking spaces. Words to that effect.
Perfect. Thank you. So subject to that condition and the provision of appropriate assessment, the Office of Recommendation is that Planning Permission be delegated with a view to approval. I have a proposer in Councillor Madden and a seconder in Councillor Guest. And we have a show of hands, those in favour of the application and Office of Recommendation. Those against? And any abstentions? So the result of that vote is 7 members voting in favour of Office of Recommendation, 0 against and 1 abstention from myself. Office of Recommendation is therefore carried. Members of the public or those who are here for item 5C, welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. So moving on to the next item, next planning application is item 5D on the agenda, and this is for single-storey front and rear extension, 2 roof lights on the rear, and part demolition of existing rear extension at 3 Church Road. Do any members wish to declare an interest in this item? Registered to speak On this item, I have Parish Councillor Paul Kelly speaking in objection, and Ward Councillor Douris also speaking in objection. I will now hand over to the case officer, Madison Graham, to take us through to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for a single-storey front and rear extension with part demolition of the existing rear extension and the inclusion of 2 roof lights on the proposed rear extension. Next slide, please. And so the left image shows the existing site location plan. The site is located within Little Gaddesden Conservation Area, the rural area, and the Chilterns National Landscape. Opposite the site to the southwest is Little Gaddesden Bowls Club and Recreation Ground. The proposed site plan on the right, shows a proposal with the full width front porch extension and the rear extension with the roof lights. Also, as you can see, the site benefits from a large rear garden and sufficient garden space is retained. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides just show some images of the existing property. So these show the front of the existing property, showing the existing hipped roof front porch. It's noted that the existing materials of the porch do not match the host dwelling. Next slide, please. And the next image shows the access of the site from Church Road and shows its neighbouring properties as well. And shared driveway, Next slide shows the rear of the property, so that's the existing rear extension. You can see that it's not quite a full width extension, and the proposal is just to extend that extension out and make it a full width extension. It's not getting any deeper or protruding any further into the rear garden. Next slide, please. So these are the existing floor plans and elevations of the site. You can see the front porch existing and the existing rear elevation. You can see again, the rear elevation is not a full width, and the proposed scheme would bring it to be a full width extension. Next slide, please. This slide shows the full width rear extension and the roof lights as well, along with the hipped roof full width porch extension. This front element of the scheme is the part which raised concern with the parish council and forms the reason for their objection. The conservation officer has been consulted on the application and notes that the properties on this section of Church Road have been subject to alteration, and the porches on these pairs of properties on this section of Church Road have all been enlarged and rebuilt at some point. Whilst there aren't any full width front extensions on this row of houses, the homogeneous character of the semi-detached pairs has been weakened through the alterations of their frontages over the years. So therefore, the proposed alteration on this front elevation is considered to have a neutral impact on the conservation area and result in no additional harm. Next slide, please. These just show the existing and proposed side elevations for the scheme. Yeah, nothing else to add on that one. Next slide, please. And then these are some street scene photos submitted by the applicant's team. These images show the varying sort of size, scale and design of the nearby properties, along with their varying frontages. They also vary a lot in terms of some of them have roof lights, they have different sort of windows and door arrangements as well. The application therefore on balance would have a neutral impact due to these existing alterations to many of the front elevations on Long Church Road. The distinctive character of these properties has been eroded over the years, and the current proposal is considered to cause no additional harm to the significance of the conservation area. Due to its low level impact and small scale as well, it's also not considered to cause any harm to the Chilterns National Landscape. It's therefore recommended for approval on this basis, subject to conditions outlined in section 11 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. I'll now invite speakers to address the meeting. Councillor Paul Kelly speaking in objection first. When you're ready, we'll grab up the timer.
Is that working? Right.
Is that, bear with us 1 second, I'll just grab up the timer. You've got 3 minutes when you start speaking.
Thank you. My name is Paul Kelly. I'm chairman of Little Gaddesden Parish Council, and I couldn't really disagree more with the officer's report. However, I don't completely disagree with the conservation officer. I did try to send some photographs to everybody and some conclusions, and I made a mistake on there because on the website we don't have access to the officer's report or the conservation officer's report. It's only after reading this report I have updated my sort of views on it. If I go to the conservation area appraisal, there's a little extract from there. There are 3 blocks of matching semi-detached 2-storey houses from 1953, sitting in a long individual plot, brick and tiled roof, shared stacks, originally with simple gable porches. There are 3 properties or 3 semis in question here. 4 of them look identical from the front. A lot of them have been updated, but the view of 4 of them from the road is pretty much identical. The ones that are not is property 3, the one in question here, and property 1. If I go on to what the conservation officer says, it says, conservation has some reservations over the proposed introduction of a full-width front extension as it unbalances the pair. And what the officer means by that, it unbalances the pair within that semi. I'd like to take that further, and it not only unbalances the pair, it unbalances the 3 pairs of semis. And as I said before, out of the 6 houses, 4 of them look pretty much identical from the front. And I think that this proposal, particularly putting a front extension on there, would be a huge mistake. It is also mentioned that, unfortunately, I'll quote from the conservation officer again, unfortunately, the properties have been subject to alteration and porches, and these pairs of properties have been enlarged and rebuilt. Yes, they have, but most of them have been rebuilt and they look fairly similar. So the street view and the consistency of these properties is not in dispute. What is very, very clear is that the existing property has a particularly ugly extension on it, but that is not really a comparison that should be made. I would be grateful if you voted against this.
Thank you, Paul. That's 3 minutes. Councillor Joris, you have this works. You have 5 minutes now. Megan, is your mic working? Do you want to test it? No. No, it's online as well. It looks like it's working now.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Yep. I'm speaking in support of the parish council's position, and I want to make it clear that I'm only concerned with the front elevation of it. The 6 properties form part of 6 coronation villas, and as such is a little piece of history commemorating the coronation of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. This would damage the inherent style of the properties, this proposal, which the remaining 5 properties broadly adhere to in terms of a gable end porch. The officer report refers to a long front drive, but I would argue that it's not that long compared with many other drives in the area of Little Gaddesden. All the properties in Church Road in this group of 6 all have similar front end gable ends, and they're all above the front doors. It's acknowledged in the report that the existing porch was probably constructed without permission. And I think that's accepted by everybody. And it certainly doesn't match the other gable end porches that are in this particular group of houses. The report refers to the conservation area character assessment. And I do have to say that this was put together by a group of residents with great care and diligence. And it does seem to have been initially a little bit disregarded. And that would bring into question the nature and the importance of having a caca, as it is known. It's also admitted, I think, in the officer's report that the current structure looks awkward and is certainly out of keeping with the other 5 properties. And I would applaud any opportunity to improve the scheme and bring the number 3 into the format of the remaining 5 with the gable end. The lack of a pitched roof on the porch breaks up the symmetry of what is a small but valuable collection of properties forming part of Little Gadsden's history. It's a small item, but it means a great deal to the people who live in and care for the village and its history. And it's for that reason, and indeed with a heavy heart, that I would, if I were voting, I would vote against the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Doris. Thank you for giving the time. Members, over to you for any questions, debate, points of clarification. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. I know this little row of cottages as well. I hear what the parish councillor and what Terry said, but I have to say, looking at this on Street View and going back through the years, I don't agree that all the others look the same. The others do have gable end porches, but they're not all the same. They're not all the same size. They're not even all full porches. One of them's just got a roof, by the look of it. One of the houses also got a bay window. So it kind of takes away the argument, I think, about them all looking so similar. They've got different windows, not massively different windows, but different windows nevertheless. And this one's already got this same style of porch on the front, and all they want to do really is to repeat what's there and make it a bit bigger. So I don't really have a problem with it. I just wanted to make those points. I'll leave someone else to decide whether to propose it.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor Symington.
Thank you. I also spotted that there was a window next to it that I would have called it bow-fronted, bay-fronted. So there is no uniformity. I've got 2 questions. One is some of the objections relate to a loss of light. Wondered if we could just have a comment on that and whether that is a valid argument. And the other question is around the plaque, which hasn't been referred to by the objectors, but feels to me the one thing that would be quite nice to have confirmed that the plaque actually remains and is unaffected by the proposed development.
Are you able to repeat your first question? I do apologise.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the first question was about the loss of light. Some of the objectors online have referred to a loss of light as a result of this, and I just would like clarification as to whether that is a valid objection.
I believe the consultation responses regarding concern over the loss of light relate to the impact the front porch will have on the neighbour, but it is noted there's already quite a significant hedge that separates those neighbours, so the porch wouldn't result in any additional harm or loss of light than the existing hedge already does. And in answer to the second question about the plaque, it is proposed to be retained. I believe it hasn't been subject to any alterations within the scheme, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
I also visited the site yesterday, walked all the way down from the village hall up to Bede Close, and overall there isn't really that much uniformity. There's not that much uniformity even in the 6 properties that we're mainly discussing. Also, we all received an email from the applicant earlier today complaining that nobody had notified her about today's committee. I think she would have wanted to come if she'd known. And she supplied some advice from her architect and more photographs of the street. And it's clear to me that there really isn't that much uniformity. And I'm perfectly happy for the applicant to have her very minor front extension. I don't think it will be particularly significant. I agree with the conservation officer on this, that it's something that is within acceptable standards of variation. So I would certainly support the application. Thank you.
Just to be clear, is that a proposal? Officer's recommendation? We'll park it in the meantime. Yep. Thank you. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Chair. Look, we're talking about a porch and extending a rear extension. So what could be built under permitted development rights?
Under permitted development rights, you could achieve a 3 metre squared porch, I believe, under Class D, which is the proposed is obviously larger than that. And rear extensions up to 4 metres in depth are also be permitted under PD. But in this case, as is an existing rear extension, the rear works wouldn't be considered permitted development.
Thank you. And to come back, I see that the conservation officer has said that considering the quality of the existing, that if the porch was built in a matching red brick, it would have a neutral impact on the significance of the conservation area. So I can't see any condition about materials. So how's that going to be addressed?
There will be a condition for matching materials. So it says the materials to be used in the construction of the external surfaces of development hereby permitted shall match the existing building in terms of size, colour and texture.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, probably do need to clarify that. So in terms of the existing building, obviously there is the unsatisfactory existing materials. So we obviously don't want the extension to match the, so we may need just to tweak the condition to make sure that it matches the appropriate brickwork and not the inappropriate.
Yeah, we can say it can match the host dwelling rather than.
Yeah, for full reassurance on this point, we would propose changing the condition to receive a sample of the material for approval, so that we can be sure that it matches the original host building and not the unfortunate brickwork of the extension.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. I mean, just very briefly, I mean, the whole of what's happened to these houses kind of makes a bit of a mockery of the conservation area system, if you like, because if there hadn't been the previous changes, and if this porch was the gable like all of the others, then it would be much more easy to say that this shouldn't be amended. But given the things that people have said, given that the current, I've also been walking up and down the street virtually on Street View, just trying to work this out, given the state of the current extension, I think I have to go with a wider extension, although the width of it won't be in keeping with the rest of the street scene. It will actually be visually an improvement on what's gone there before. But I do understand the residents and the parish councils, sorry, the parish council and the councillors' concerns about the impact on the conservation area. But I think we've kind of lost that a little bit, and that, from previous decisions. So I think, on balance, I'm going to have to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a seconder for office of recommendation? Yeah. Councillor Bowman.
An observation, the porch with the hipped roof does not appear to have the remnants of a ridge above it. So I'm sceptical that it ever did have a gabled porch on the front, and therefore I'm sceptical. You know, I'm wondering whether we have information as to whether any of them had gable end porches originally, and therefore trying to preserve a feature which, you know, was just a coincidence that several houses happen to get the same porches. Someone got a job lot of porches maybe, and perhaps, you know, after this one, perhaps they'll all have uniform full width extensions on the front.
Thank you. Any final comments, points of debate, questions? Should we move to the vote? Okay, I have just as a reminder, the officer recommendation is that planning permission be granted. I have a proposer in Councillor Patterson and a seconder in Councillor Hobson. Can we have a show of hands? Those in favour of officer recommendation? Oh,
with the amended condition 3.
Yes, yeah. Those in favour of officer recommendation? Any against? And an abstention from myself. So the result of that vote is that 8 members voted in favour, 0 against and 1 abstention. So officer recommendation is therefore carried. Those that were here for item 5D, you know, may now remove yourselves. You're welcome to. Councillor Generis, if you want to come back. So the next planning application on the agenda is item 5A, which is for the demolition of existing commercial/storage buildings and redevelopment with 9 dwellings and associated access as outlined. Do any members wish to declare an interest in this item? There are no registered. Councillor Riddick.
Yes, again, I'd like to declare an interest in as much as it's in my ward. I did call it in. I've had no contact with the applicant or their agents at all, so I'm coming with an open mind.
Councillor Patterson.
My previous objections to Councillor Riddick voting still apply, given the comments he's made on this application as well. I don't mind him speaking, obviously, because he's the ward councillor. But he can't. I don't think he should vote.
So the advice from our legal officer, again, Councillor Riddick, is to take part, but not in the vote, as with the previous item, item 5C. If you're content with that.
Sorry, that was a bit garbled. Can you be a bit clearer, please?
Yep. So the recommendation from legal is for you to not vote on this particular application, given that you've called it in.
No, I wouldn't vote on it.
No, yeah.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. As long as we're clear. Councillor Madden.
Just for clarification, as far as I'm aware, and has always been the case, a councillor can call something in if it's in their ward, but still have an open mind. The question is whether a councillor declares that they've got an open mind and then pulls out a prepared speech during the debate. I've called in items before and have been allowed to vote because I just wanted it to be looked at by the whole committee. It's whether somebody really does genuinely have an open mind rather than whether it's been called in, I would have said.
Yeah, I think Councillor Riddick has agreed to not vote on the item.
Sorry, I just meant to say one other thing. It's also normal practice that if somebody's not voting, they're not allowed to speak either.
So you're saying can't speak, can't vote?
So you can speak as a ward councillor, but we won't encourage you to vote, the advice.
Well, that's as we did before. Yeah.
Councillor Hobson.
I have no wish to stop Councillor Riddick speaking at this meeting, but I think we do need to be clear for future meetings that I believe ward councillors need to register in advance to speak. So I'm not asking that we don't let him speak today, but can we just, because that's the practice beforehand, just so we're all on the same page for future call-ins. Thank you.
Thank you. Given that we have no one registered to speak, no members of the public registered to speak, I will now hand over to Madison again to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks outline plan and permission for access and layout, with all other matters reserved, for the demolition of the existing buildings on site and the construction of 9 dwellings and associated access. Slide, please. This slide shows the existing location plan, which is situated off of Meadow Drive in Bovingdon, to the northwest of Green Lane. It's adjacent to the wider Grange farm development, which is currently being built out to the north/northwest of the application site. The site is also located within the green belt. Slide, please. This slide shows that there are existing storage/commercial buildings on site, with the existing houses also shown to the east, outlined in blue. The existing buildings have been labelled, might not be that clear on the slides, but they've been labelled A, B, and C. A is the building nearest the entrance site, C is at the top of the plan, and B is the one towards the back where the red line boundary is. Next slide, please. These are the existing elevations, which demonstrate the scale and appearance of these buildings. I've also included images further into the presentation which show the appearance and scale of these existing buildings on site. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a proposed block plan for the site, showing the proposed 9 dwellings with a mixture of terraced, semi-detached and detached dwellings. Proposed parking and access is also shown here. The equestrian use, which is outlined in blue to the west of the site, is to be retained by the owner, is owned by the same owner of the site. The stables are used to house the family's horse in winter months. They're not a commercial facility, and there is no intention in the future to change them to a commercial facility. As I said, the horse is only kept there in the winter months, and at other times it is grazed locally. Access to the site is proposed from the adjoining Grange farm development. The existing access road off of Meadow Drive is to be closed or removed following completion of the development. Next slide, please. The next few slides show images from across the site. So this is the view as you enter the site. I've taken this image from standing inside the site. The next slide will show it from Meadow Drive looking into the site. So that's the existing access road, but that will not be the access road once the wider development is finished. Next slide, please. And again, the next couple of slides show the existing buildings and hard standings. So that building there with the sort of shallow pitched roof, that's building A. I believe the one on the right is building C. And again, you can see it's used for storage of sorts of hard standing there. That right image shows building B on the right as well. Next slide, please. Again, just more images of the type of facilities that are currently on the site, current buildings, current hard standing. Next slide, please. These are the views of the equestrian site. So the left image shows the access into the equestrian site, and again, the right image is of the same thing, just stood sort of further back in the site so you can get a sense of the scale of it. Next slide, please. This plan shows an indicative street scene layout. Obviously, appearance and scale are reserved matters, so this plan is indicative only, and it's just to give an idea of what the site could look like once developed. Again, I must re-emphasise that the current application we are approving isn't approving scale, height or appearance of these dwellings, just the overall layout and access of the site. And this plan is purely just to give an illustrative idea of what the site may look like. Next slide, please. This slide shows the tree protection plan. Our tree officers were consulted and raised no objection to the scheme. G1, 2 and 4 are category C trees, which means they're poor quality and the removal is accepted. T1 ash tree is also a Cat C and is proposed for retention, but the tree officer notes it is quite damaged and would not oppose its removal. T1, the one I just spoke about, is, I believe, the one behind plot 7. And then T2, which is behind sort of plot 4 and 5, located more centrally within this plot, is a category B tree, which is a moderate quality. It's proposed for a 5-metre crown reduction, which has been noted by the tree officer as a significant pruning operation, but it's noted also that the tree would recover quite quickly, and the pruning operation would also allow for less overshadowing of the gardens. Next slide, please. So the swept path analysis shows how a vehicle with a horse box would travel through the Grange farm development and into the application site at the bottom. This plan was requested by Highways to ensure that large vehicles with horse boxes could adequately and safely access, enter and exit the site, and Highways have no objections to the scheme. Next slide, please. So again, this is a proposed block plan layout showing the proposed layout and access in which the outline application seeks approval for, with all other matters reserved. The site is considered to comprise previously developed land and also meets the definition of grey belt as set out within the NPPF glossary. It's further considered to represent appropriate development within the green belt as it complies with the relevant criteria set out in paragraph 155 of the NPPF. Also including Part C, as the site is sustainably located and sustainability will be improved via the wider Grange farm development, which is providing additional footpaths and cycleways. Overall, the redevelopment would not give rise to substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt, and it is recommended that the application is approved, subject to numerous conditions and the completion of a legal agreement to secure a financial contribution to mitigate any likely significant effects on the Chiltern Beechwoods.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you.
Members, over to you. Any questions? Points of debate, clarification? Anyone want to start? So, Symington.
Thanks. I'm happy to start. I have to admit being slightly confused about the closure of, it's not clear to me which road is being closed and which bit is not. In terms of this one you've got in front of us, so firstly, can you explain that? The bit on the right-hand side, that's an existing building that's an existing residential building, is that right? And then the people that own that or live in it have the equestrian bit on the far side?
Yes,
correct?
so there's 2 houses to the top of that plan, which are in the same ownership as the whole site, the same equestrian use as well. I believe it's multiple owners.
Okay, sorry, so which is the equestrian bit and which are the houses?
The houses are at the top end, I believe that's west.
Okay.
And the equestrian use is outlined in blue the other side.
Okay, and can you point to where the road is being closed?
So if you flick to the existing location plan, should be a few slides up. See Meadow Drive a bit better on those. first one. Can I have the first slide? I think it might be the very first one. Yeah. So the plan on the left, you can see the access. Well, actually, maybe the plan on the right, you can see Meadow Drive goes along and then it meets that red line boundary. As part of the wider Taylor Wimpey Grange Farm development, that road is going to be closed, removed, and access to this application site will be via the new development. They'll have to drive through the currently being built out development.
Okay, and where's that on that map?
Just above, sort of to the north/northwest.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm being very obtuse here, but you've shown us a swept path analysis.
Yeah.
On a road that hasn't yet been built, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe it's currently under construction.
Okay. Right, okay. Thank you for that. And then I've got two other questions. One is, this is just relating to comments. There are comments about the height of the houses. I know it's indicative, but presumably at this stage, if this goes through, then that house at height gets sort of baked in, so to speak. And if they're much higher than a normal two-bedroom house, then are we a two-bedroom, two-story house? Does that mean actually the building's going to be much larger than is currently specified? And then there's reference to Swift bricks, which you might want to comment on the relevance of that to this, whether it's something we should be considering.
Yes, so in terms of height, the plans are indicative only and would not form part of any approved plans conditions, meaning that those indicative layouts aren't being approved. The outline is approving purely just 9 dwellings in the layout that you're seeing there. So the height and everything will be a matter to be dealt with at the reserve matter stage.
Okay.
And then, sorry, can you repeat the other question?
Just there have been reference in the comments to Swift bricks for housing Swifts. Is this relevant? Something that we should be taking into consideration?
Yes, yeah, this is relevant and something we should be taking into consideration. I believe it might have been mentioned as well by our ecology officers, and it's something that we can add in to condition as well, if members feel that strongly that condition should be included.
Councillor Symington, did you have a...
No, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, to me, this, particularly given that we don't have our 5-year housing supply, and if the land isn't being used for anything else, this is actually, we've had lots of discussions about what's grey belt and what's not grey belt, or brownfield and grey belt. And this is what I think the policy of grey belt was intended for. And so, subject to obviously further details in the future, but for this at this level, I'm happy to support this. I think it's a sensible infill, particularly given that we've got the development above. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, most of the comments or the objections seem to be about overdevelopment and high density of housing. And yeah, there appears to be a development to the northwest. It would be helpful to know if that's already approved, which is of similar or even higher density. There's 4 houses in a terrace, for example, that's visible on the screenshot that we've got there. Regarding quality and appearance of the area, I can't see how they would look less attractive than the green corrugated metal sort of industrial buildings that are there at the moment. So I don't see that either of those sort of objections are valid. And on the point which Councillor Symington raised, yes, on the Swift bricks, there seems to be an NPPF requirement, 187D, which has been called out on a couple of, I think there must be some sort of campaign groups that are scrutinising applications, and I'm not sure what needs to be invoked to make sure that the NPPF, that particular section, is complied with. There's also a British standard 42021, which has various references to red listed hole nesting species, including starlings, house martins, and house sparrows. And do we need to put anything in the conditions to make sure those are complied with? Do they need to reference the ecological report, or would it be a planning infringement if they're not complied with anyway?
So, yeah, so obviously the impact on biodiversity is a key material planning consideration, as you've indicated in paragraph 187D of the NPPF. It highlights in that particular paragraph 3 species: swifts, bats, and hedgehogs. But I think the overall message is the need to that they're given as examples as opposed to kind of mandatory requirements that we have to protect those particular 3 species. So I guess the question is whether the application as it currently stands, there is a biodiversity net gain plan condition that would ensure 10% biodiversity net gain compared to the existing situation on the site. So, so I guess the question is whether the ecological objective is being met through that condition, or whether members feel that there should be kind of particular reference made as those species are referenced in the paragraph. It would be in the gift of members to add a condition to seek to add swift bricks. Yeah. Yeah, the point that Robert's making is that appearance and landscaping are both reserved matters. So when we receive those reserved matters applications, we can ensure that the details incorporate swift bricks, and in the landscaping, things such like hedgehog tunnels, that they can be dealt with through the reserved matters applications for landscaping.
Thank you.
So, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. That's quite useful. And my earlier question is really whether these objections based on the densification and changing the aesthetic of the area are really valid, considering the surrounding developments and also what this development is replacing.
So in terms of the sort of extra density that the proposal's adding, being as it's adjacent to a recently approved much larger scheme, it's considered it would sort of have a negligible impact, no additional impact. I believe the comments that you're referring to also mostly talk about them backing all onto sort of 1 or 2 singular dwellings as well, but they all meet the sort of the back-to-back distances that we would like to see, and they're all compliant with those. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madden.
I was just going to second the officer recommendation.
Did we have a proposer? I don't believe we had a proposer so far. Councillor Hobson. Okay, put those down. We'll park those for now. Councillor Brumham, your mic's still on, I'm not sure. Councillor Patterson.
I'm generally in favour of this application. As one thing, I suppose a fairly minor matter, but it's about transport and whether people are going to use public transport. And at one point it said that it's a long way to the nearest bus stop, 800 metres, which is double what it ought to be in an urban area. But it's going to be reduced considerably by, presumably, the new development is going to produce a new throughway to the bus stop. Can you show that on the map? First, how people would have to walk from this development to the nearest bus stop, and it would be 800 metres, and then the alternative which will be provided for them.
So I don't have a plan showing that. I'm sure if we had a bit of time, we could bring up the plans that previously approved the other scheme, and we would be able to see the layout of that and how the link between them. But I don't have a plan that currently shows that.
So you don't know where the Grange bus stop is?
I don't believe it's on any of the plans, no.
I don't know how, the bus goes along there. Cheshire to Hemel.
Did you have a question on that, Councillor Patterson, on your question in terms of public transport? Or?
Okay, well, I'll accept that there will be a much shorter route for the benefit of anybody living on the new estate. Thanks. I certainly support the application.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments, questions? Should we move to the vote? Happy to move to the vote. I have a proposer for officer recommendation, which, as a reminder, is that planning permission be delegated with a view to approval, subject to the completion of section 106 and conditions set out in section 11 of the report. Have a proposer in Councillor Hobson and a seconder in Councillor Madison. Could I have a show of hands, those in favour of officer recommendation? Those against? And any abstentions? So the result of that vote is 8 members voted in favour of officer recommendation, 0 against and 1 abstention for myself, and officer recommendation is therefore carried. Anyone here for item 5A? The public, welcome to leave or crack on with. Final item on the agenda, or final planning application on the agenda, which is item 5B, and is for the demolition of existing buildings and construction of 3 dwellings at land at Green Bloom Nursery. There are no registered speakers on the item, and I will now hand over to the case officer, Robert Freeman, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you stated, the proposal is after the demolition of outbuildings and construction of 3 4-bed dwellings on the site adjacent to what was Green Bloom Nursery. To provide members with some of the background, Green Bloom Nursery was granted planning permission for its own redevelopment effectively during March 2025 and is currently under construction. That was for the demolition of buildings and construction of 2 dwellings on that site. So this obviously is a further addition to that scheme. If we can move on to the first slide. Just before we go into the detail of the application, there's a couple of proposed amendments to the conditions dealing with mainly with the footpath proposed as part of the development linking the site through to an existing bus stop on Chipperfield Road. One of those is to add to the materials condition to require details of the actual hard standing for that footpath, and subsequent condition changes to condition 6 with the new text highlighted in yellow there, is to ensure that that path is constructed in accordance with those materials and is thereafter maintained in accordance with the approved details. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping. Next slide, please. So the application site is, as I say, effectively a second phase to what was development on Green Bloom Nurseries. So Green Bloom Nurseries is outlined in blue, forms part of the same site ownership, and effectively you've got the red outline shown there, extending into neighbouring fields that were used by the owner of that property, effectively for storage of livestock and horticulture activities at various different stages in its planning history. The applicant has also been subject to an enforcement investigation relating to the spreading of material across that land, which was within their ownership, and that's shown quite clearly on that right-hand side there, together with details of how that's, you can see where the existing and proposed dwellings are being constructed on that location plan. Next slide, please. Moving on, there's a couple of the aerial images of the site from Google Maps. So on the left-hand side, you've got the view towards Chipperfield Road. Obviously, this was when Green Bloom Nursery was originally on that site. So you can see the horticultural buildings and the nursery buildings extending down the Bourne End Lane side of that slide on the far-hand left-hand side, and the fields within which the new proposals are to be located. Swinging round towards the slide on the right-hand side, that's the view towards Bourne End Lane. Again, historic images showing what was the nursery site and the land immediately adjacent to that. And you can just make out on those slides the outbuildings in question on that neighbouring plot. Particularly a reference, obviously, there are the existing residential properties to the north of that site, with the gardens extending down towards Chipperfield Road. And beyond that, you've got obviously houses on the other side of Bourne End Lane as well. Next slide, please. So this is the proposal before members. So you've got the demolition of 3 buildings effectively covered within plot 2. That's the central one on that slide. And the construction of a row of 3 new dwellings across that site, a footpath connection between the development currently under construction and the bus stop on Chipperfield Road there. Next slide, please. These just could quickly take you through the elevations to the proposed dwelling. So that's the one on plot 1. So that's the one nearest to Bourne End Lane. Plot 2 in the middle there, and plot 3 on the end. So very similar in style to those under construction at the current time. Next slide, please. And that's a straight-to-street scene, effectively, from what you'd see from the residential properties that's come off of Bourne End Lane to the north of the site, looking back towards Chipperfield Road. So that's that street scene, internal street scene. There is a significant hedgerow to the front of plot 1, as being retained on the layout plan. Obviously, there are quite significant boundary trees as well, extending on the site. Next slide, please. Those are the 4 floor plans. So generally speaking, you've got, as I say, 3 substantial 4-bedroom dwellings, large gross internal floor areas associated with those, quite heavily glazed on the southern side. But obviously you've got some shadow there from the trees as well, but so hence the need for large glazed openings on that side of the property. Next slide, please. So just briefly going to take you through this next element, and obviously from the photographs that I've got before you, you've got effectively there's 4 photos being taken on the slides in order. There's one effectively taken along that eastern boundary, the arrow facing towards where I've indicated the garden. That property would be roughly in yellow in relation to units under construction. Obviously, you've got the frontage of those units broadly following that blue line across the site, and the key landscaping features that are being retained are in green there. We've got obviously pictures taken towards those, which reflect where the outbuildings are. So you've got a range of slot pictures coming up. Next slide, please. So as you can see on that picture, you've got on the dwellings under construction on that left-hand side. Got the outbuildings themselves looking towards Chipperfield Road, central to that plot on the right-hand side. Next slide. You have a view taken effectively across the northern boundary of the site back towards what would be House 1 on the site under construction, with outbuilding in the foreground and the hedgerow. So the hedgerow being retained along that boundary between those proposed residential units and existing residential units to the north. And the right-hand side there, you've got obviously another view back towards Chipperfield, from Chipperfield Road back towards those units. I think you can just about make out the outbuilding on the kind of the quite central towards the background of that picture on the right-hand side. There's that building on the other side. Next slide, please. And finishing up on the proposed layout of that site. I say you've got 3 substantial 4-bedroom dwellings, each with at least 3 parking spaces each, and using an existing approved access off of Bourne End Lane, and indeed providing a new pedestrian link through to the bus stop on Chipperfield Road. Officers are of the opinion that this comprises a grey belt development and is acceptable under the grey belt policies, and are therefore recommending its approval subject to completion of legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Members, straight over to you. Any questions? Points for debate? Who wants to kick us off? That's the madam.
Just quite simply, I can't see any problem with this one at all. So, depending on how many other people want to speak, but I'm happy to approve opposite recommendation.
Thank you. I'll put that for now. Councillor Hobson.
I just wanted to say it's really lovely to see a development where quite significant lumps of trees are being retained, because I usually cry when that happens, when they're taken down. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Did the other houses that are under construction now, they got a approval last year? Did the parish council object to those?
I don't believe they did. I mean, the objection from the parish council in terms of this application is obviously that it's inappropriate development in the green belt. I think the parish council recognised in the original scheme that it was a redevelopment of what would be called previously developed land, and therefore that wasn't inappropriate in the green belt, and as such they didn't have that concern with the original approval of those 2 units.
Yeah, I can see there is a difference. Nevertheless, it's clearly grey belt, and under the new rules anyway. And I'd be happy to support it. Thanks.
Is that a second, Councillor Patterson? Yeah. Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, considering our earlier discussion about the Swift boxes there's a ecology report by Chipperfield, and it does make some, on breeding birds, it says nothing really, but it does have section 4.4 additional recommendations, which includes habitats for bats, birds and insects. And our recommended conditions seem a little bit defeatist in that they say that biodiversity net gain is not possible, and it doesn't seem to give anything specific. So I wonder whether the condition could include compliance with section 4.4 of the Chipperfield Ecology Report.
Yeah, I think we have to be quite, make a quite clear distinction in this case between what is recognised as biodiversity net gain improvements under the biodiversity net gain matrix and what is a biodiversity net gain improvement or a ecological improvement that is otherwise being secured. Now, the landscaping plan attached to this proposal does actually set out a lot of what I would describe as ecological improvements, mainly in terms of bat boxes, bird boxes, retained piles of logs for beetle habitats and alike. Those improvements, whilst being ecological improvements, don't fit within the matrix because the matrix is recognising habitat. So, in answer to your question, you know, the swift boxes per se are not included in this kind of condition, but nevertheless, there is other measures incorporated within the landscaping to deal with protected species and provide suitable habitat, and overall that is considered to be a benefit to the scheme. The biodiversity net gain requirements themselves under the submitted matrix would not be possible to be achieved on site, although we have subjected to that to a condition, particularly with a view to looking at the additional land that is obviously located to the south of those 3 units where you are retaining the existing landscaping, and which I understand does still fall within the applicant's ownership. I wonder if there's scope to improve the biodiversity net gain in terms of that land where we could meet that condition. But it is a matter to obviously be subject to further details by condition. And in the event that that can't be achieved, then the option is always there to achieve biodiversity net gain off-site.
So can we include a condition to follow the recommendations provided in the Chipperfield Ecology Report, section 4.4?
Yeah, I think in the main they're covered by the landscaping plans, so they are already subject to the approved plan. But I've no harm in double counting that or adding a new condition to reflect that, just to make sure there isn't anything specific in that report that hasn't worked its way onto a plan thus far.
I think that would help to satisfy people who are putting those comments in to the planning applications.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Got that, Robert?
Yeah.
Any final points? Councillor Riddick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There is a fundamental problem. This isn't a grey belt site, it's green belt. If you look on page 49 at 3.1, it's confirmed that it's green belt. But further to that, on page 50, 5.1, the applicants did seek pre-application advice. And they were advised that the proposal did not comply with the golden rules in paragraph 156 of the MPF. And on page 52 at 8.1, that non-compliance was confirmed. So it is green belt, not grey belt. Thank you.
Robert, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, you should be aware, obviously, that the pre-application submission relates to a much larger site area. It would be that larger site area that would comprise major development under the definition of major development within the general permitted development order. So obviously we are looking at a reduced site area and a reduced proposal, both in terms of its overall scale and floor area. The new development as proposed on this scheme is a minor development. It is not subject to the golden rules, and therefore paragraph 156 of the MPPF is not applicable. In terms of the grey belt, green belt debate, obviously the site does not comprise land that would fall within purposes A, B or D as set out in paragraph 8.5 of the report. It doesn't contribute strongly towards those purposes, and for those reasons we've concluded that it falls within the definition of grey belt land. I appreciate that possibly is not how government originally proposed grey belt policy to us, but nonetheless it is how it worked its way through into the wording of the legislation. And obviously that is what we are working with in this instance.
So just to clarify, it is possible to be both green belt and grey belt. Grey belt is part of, grey belt land is part of the green belt that is previously developed land or makes a limited contribution to the purposes of the green belt. So it can be both grey belt and green belt.
So, Reddit, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I accept that, but this is green belt. Nothing has ever been built on that particular site. Nothing.
Robert, do you want to follow that on with anything?
Yes, nothing has to be built on the site. It merely has to not contribute to the purposes of A, B and D, which are effectively set out in the report.
Thank you. We'll move on. Any other final points? Shall we move to the vote? I have and as a reminder, the Office of Recommendation is the planning permission is delegated with a view to approval, subject to legal agreement and the conditions set out in the report. I have a proposer for Office of Recommendation in Councillor Madden and a seconder in Councillor Patterson. Can we have a show?
Sorry, Chair. Just again, just to be absolutely clear before we go to the vote, the recommendation is as you've described, but with the amendments to conditions 3 and 6 that Robert highlighted at the beginning, which related to footpath materials and maintenance, and the additional condition proposed by Councillor Bromham in respect of compliance with paragraph 4.4 of the ecology report.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Those in favour, show of hands. Those against? And abstentions? So the result of that vote is 8 members voting in favour of Officer Recommendation, 1 against and 1 abstention. Officer Recommendation is therefore carried. That concludes the planning applications on under item 5. Philip, I believe you had an update on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a brief update on the national scheme of delegation. We're just bringing up the slides. I don't mind if it's recorded. The slides will be circulated. The slides are text heavy because they're meant to be an information pack that members can take away afterwards. I just wanted to very briefly run through. If you go to the next slide. So, yeah, what is a national scheme of delegation? Why is it being introduced? Some detail in terms of the draft regulations and what it means to Development Management Committee. What are the practical issues that still need to be worked through from a decorum perspective? And then what are the next steps? Next slide. So, yeah, so I'll canter through these because, as I said, there's information that members can read at your leisure. So the National Scheme of Delegation, it's effectively the same as the local scheme of delegation that we have in our constitution, in that it will determine which applications go to committee and which are delegated to officers. A key message from the government is that local authorities will need to amend their constitution to align with the forthcoming national scheme of delegation. Failure to do so may make decisions liable to judicial review. So we'll come to timescales later, but obviously the Development Management Committee, following the take effect date of these regulations, must be in line with an amended constitution to take into account this national scheme of delegation. So, yeah, in terms of some of the implications, it's quite clear that some of our current call-in processes, for example, the town and parish call-in process, the ward councillor call-in process, they're not going to be possible under the new regime. And we'll look at the alternatives in a second. Ultimately, this is going to result in significantly fewer planning applications coming to committee. If we look at tonight's agenda, for example, so we had 3 minors and 1 householder. So none of those 4 applications would have come to committee under the regulations. And in the previous committee, only the Bovingdon floodlights potentially could have come to committee. So we can see a significant reduction. It will, as the kind of the final message there, allow elected members more time to scrutinise the most important proposals within their area. Next slide. So this is from the written statement of Matthew Pinnicock, outlining why this is being introduced. I've highlighted, I guess, the key messages coming from government to ensure that the planning system, planning committees operate as effectively as possible. They recognise that already there is a high level of delegation, so 96% of all decisions are already delegated. But there is variation across the country in terms of which applications are heard at committee and which applications aren't. And one of the objectives of a national scheme is to have national consistency. Next slide. And yeah, this is the kind of the key government message. Planning committees should focus on the key proposals that matter to an area rather than being drawn into minor or technical applications that can be effectively determined by officers. So that's the message coming from government. Obviously, there is the bigger picture in terms of the government's housing delivery targets and the government changing PD rights, changing the NPPF, changing the scheme of delegation. So they're looking at anything that they consider as a blocker and making amendments. So I guess in terms of the bigger picture, the government will be introducing this because they see this as a way of getting houses approved quicker and more consistently. Next slide. So very quickly to go through the draft regulations. The general approach is that all, planning applications will be split into 2 schedules. Everything that falls within Schedule 1 must be delegated to officers unless they are own interest applications, which effectively is the council has an interest as the landowner or as the developer. Schedule 2 applications, there's still a presumption in favour of officer delegation. However, there's now a process by which the nominated officer, nominated member, they can agree that the application should go to Development Management Committee. So Schedule 1, always delegated. Schedule 2, expected to be delegated, but can go to committee. Next slide. So here's a list of Schedule 1 applications. These are the types of applications that must be delegated. So all householders, all minor residential, so up to 9 dwellings, things like non-material amendments, lawful development certificates, discharge of conditions, etc. And the next slide shows us the Schedule 2 applications. So what I've added in red was a couple of tweaks that the government made in light of the consultation, where they moved it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. So the Section 73 applications are your minor material amendments. So if the application was originally a major application and the developer is seeking a minor change to that major development, then it's now a Schedule 2 application. But we can see some things at the bottom there, such as advertisement consents and tree preservation orders. So there's still some, I guess, some smaller matters that are within Schedule 2, which the government considers potentially could fall within that more sensitive category of application rather than based on size or strategic importance. And the next slide. So what happens essentially is all Schedule 2 applications must go through a gateway to decide whether it comes to committee or not. The key holders of that gateway will be a nominated officer. So that would likely be Ross Weir as Assistant Director Planning. He's the Chief Planning Officer. And a nominated member likely to be the Chair of DMC, with provisions for substitutes likely to be myself as Head of Development Management and the Vice Chair in the absence of the nominated members. So they would be the key holders. They would receive a list of applications that are referred to the gateway, and based on those criteria, A and B, they would decide whether or not it goes to committee. So it has to either raise an economic, social, or environmental issue of significance to the local area, or raise a significant planning matter, having regard to the development plan and other material considerations. So they're the only 2 tests that apply in deciding whether it goes to committee or not. Next slide. This is, again, just a link for information. The government has produced guidance to go along with the draft regulations. Next slide. And this guidance covers a wide range of detail. Next slide. What the guidance does do, for example, is it looks at criteria A and it says, well, these are the types of circumstances where it would be unlikely to raise a significant planning matter. So, for example, the second one is where, for example, environmental health have confirmed that the amended scheme is now fine. So that would usually mean that it wouldn't meet the gateway criteria. Next slide. And again, there's some guidance in respect of criteria B, which the nominated officer member would need to have special consideration of. Next slide. Own interested applications, as I've said, those are council applications. They are an exception to these rules, and it's obviously it was interesting that when we made the relatively recent changes to the Constitution, councillor and officer applications members were very clear that that there shouldn't be any increased delegation of those types of applications, and that the government has agreed in these draft regulations. Next slide. So here's a kind of a snapshot of the process as I see it. So we will receive an application. If it falls within Schedule 1, then it's always delegated. If it's a Schedule 2, then the starting point is delegation, but there's there's various options. We would still have our own constitution. The national scheme of delegation has to be embedded within it, but we can go beyond the national scheme of delegation. So, for example, tree preservation order applications are delegated under our local scheme of delegation. So just because it's within Schedule 2 doesn't mean that it has to go to a gateway, because our local scheme of delegation could filter it out that way. But if it's Schedule 2 and not filtered out by the local scheme of delegation, then it goes to the gateway. Those tests A and B are applied by the nominated member and officer, and then it's either a delegated or a DMC decision. Next slide. Just a brief note that the regulations have also confirmed that the size of planning committees is limited to 13, which doesn't affect decorum because we are 13, but there are other councils with committees of 15, 17, and therefore they will need to make that change as well. Next slide. So there are a number of practical issues that we need to work through. So in terms of lobbying, obviously the nominated officer and the nominated chair, we'll probably look to set up a protocol in terms of member lobbying of those individuals. I'm looking at introducing, for example, a Schedule 2 call-in form. So the member could confirm this is a Schedule 2 application. Please take this to the gateway. Yeah, there's going to be a clear role for case officers in producing a small report to assist the nominated member and officer in deciding the outcome. So yes, it is obviously interesting that the government is introducing a subjective system, because what is significant? How do you define significance? So we would need to think carefully about consistency and also not setting the bar too low, because then we would have too many applications going to DMC. Need to be aware of precedents. If we allow that application to come to DMC, then the developer of a similar application will say, well, why didn't you allow mine? And this will ultimately result in the need for, I'm anticipating, fortnightly meetings between the chair and the nominated officer to go through a list of gateway applicable applications. Next slide. So yes, in terms of member training, this is certainly something now with the increased focus, members will have the large majors, the most sensitive applications, so we can align member training with that. Ultimately, will we need to change the DMC committee meeting schedule if we have fewer items? I would imagine ultimately there would be the need for less committees, but we're not proposing to change the calendars at this stage until we can see how it turns out in practice. One thing I'm particularly interested in is how can junior officers still gain the DMC experience. At the moment, a junior planning officer can present a householder to DMC. Now there's no such opportunity because only the big applications or the most complex. So can there be a team of officers, a senior officer and a junior officer, and potentially the junior officer can present some of the slides. So thinking along those types of those points. And the regulations also make it clear that we have to keep a record, so publish which applications were taken through the gateway, what was the outcome of the gateway discussions, and the reasons. And next slide. Timescales. Government has listened to concerns that the take effect date was too soon. They have pushed it back by 1 further month. So the go live date is now the 31st of October. Next slide. So in terms of my process, we have the briefing today. I'm looking to do a briefing with town and parish councils in July. And then there's various steps of the directors and then member approval processes, ultimately leading to cabinet and council in October to formally adopt the new constitution so that we're ready for the first committee following the take effect date. And I think that's it. In terms of next steps, also the regulations state that the effectiveness of the regulations have to be reviewed in 2 years' time. So we could see further changes at that point. So hopefully that's a useful kind of introduction to the national scheme of delegation, some huge changes coming our way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philip. Are you happy to take any questions? Anyone has any? Members? Councillor Durrant.
You'll be trying to take on more plans.
So the application numbers will stay the same. It's just how they're ultimately determined. And on average, taking a planning application to committee is more officer resource intensive than under delegated. So it shouldn't have a negative impact on officer resourcing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm fully supportive of this in principle, of fewer things coming to the committee. We've discussed sort of sheds and things before. I just, not necessarily to be answered today, but I think for all of us, there's things to consider about the appearance of loss of democracy and what's the point of us, because if we've got residents coming to us with concerns. So it might be interesting later or over this process just to explore with officers how we might get to pass on comments and things to the officer. I don't know if that would work in transparency ways, but I just think it'd be good to know or have a think about how we might introduce, how we might be able to provide comments on applications in our area. So there's two things really. One is visibility of applications, and I know we have the list and we need to look at that. But just how we might actually still be involved in the process, whilst at the same time I do support fewer things coming to the committee. I hope that makes sense, sort of. It's transparency about knowing what's going on in our wards and then the ability to provide feedback and comment.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, yes, I mean, members can, I guess, already speak to the case officers regarding applications and you know, discuss elements of applications. Whether we need to create some kind of communication channels or formal arrangements, I guess that's something that we can look at as part of the practical considerations of this and the implications of having taken less applications to committee. I don't know, Rob, do you want to?
No, the other thing I was going to say was
Put your mic on, Rob, sorry.
Sorry. The other thing that occurred to me on it was actually if people are aggrieved at not being heard at committee, it could, and there is some feeling amongst in the legal profession that I've spoken to, is that it might be resulting in more litigation of the council, unfortunately. So more people will be inclined to push the JR judicial review process. So there's probably a thought about how we try and potentially between us mitigate that risk so that members still feel that the public still feel they're being heard, either by their member or via officers.
Well, there would only be a JR risk in respect of the gateway tests and how they're applied, because these are regulations set by government. So if it's Schedule 1 and it doesn't go to committee, that there's no argument. If it's Schedule 2, the question is, did it go to the gateway and how were the tests applied? We already have in the current constitution a subjective element, because there's one element of the constitution that says it depends on the opinion of the head of DM whether it's significant public interest. So I have to give a view, and some applications come to committee and some don't, and we haven't had a legal challenge on that. But yes, we do need, that's one of the key points about consistency. We do need to be mindful.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting that we should have a whole new process set in place, because I don't always talk to the officer about it. If I've got the call, I rarely have a call in now, but if I have a call in, I will call in and then I will speak. I would only go to the officer if I've got some technical questions. So I think some kind of consistent approach, very light touch, doesn't have to be hugely overburdened. I definitely don't want it to be burdensome on us or on officers, but some way of, again, we don't need to solve it today, but the transparency of what's happening and the ability for councillors to still represent their residents' views to the officer, and in writing it might just be an email, the officer would keep a record of that sort of thing, rather than it being a whole new process. I guess I'm partially thinking out loud, just responding to this, relatively fresh, although we knew this was coming and knew the main points of it. So maybe for reflection, and to come back to it early in the autumn, at a further meeting or training or something.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, points noted.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Councillor Duras.
Thank you. I noticed that you're going to go and talk to the town and parish councils. I think I'd quite like to be a fly on the wall on that. Good luck with that one, to be perfectly honest. They're talking about the Secretary of State reviewing it in 2 years' time, or in 2.5 years' time, it depends. Underpinning all of this, I hear the words local government reorganisation going on. And it just seems, I don't know, is it in moderate haste that they're putting this through with everything else that's going on? Are they building these things on a shifting sand, in a sense? That's that. And then my final point is, as I mentioned to you, but I don't think it was on the slides. I heard that if a local planning authority was minded to refuse a planning application for 150 properties, it would automatically go to the Secretary of State or PINS in Bristol. Can you say a bit more about that? Because that seems to me, in the current economic climate of building large numbers of homes, and I can see what the government are wanting to do, that it's almost going to neutralise any real activities, potentially, of democratic development control committees.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, that's now taken effect in terms of the call-in to the Secretary of State, isn't it? If there's a refusal of a scheme, proposed refusal of 150 dwellings or more, then that now needs to be referred to the Secretary of State. So, yeah, so we have a situation where less applications are being put before members with the national scheme of delegation, and then even those applications, members may make a decision, which is then referred. So yes, I mean, I do take your point. In terms of local government review, I mean, I can't obviously comment on government timescales and why they're pushing some things earlier than others, but there has been, I guess in a sense, it's not ideal timing. Because obviously we don't know yet which authorities we'll be joining with. It would be sensible to use this as an opportunity to begin to align constitutions. But there will be processes through local government review, and at the appropriate time, obviously the new authority will have its new constitution. These national regulations will apply no matter what authority is in force at any moment in time, and whilst these regulations take effect.
If I may, very briefly, with the referral to PINs, effectively, is there a danger with some of these sort of 150, 200 property developments that local planning authorities will say, there's no point in us really considering it? Would we either just drop our head and say no and let it go, or do we just say, yes, okay, we agree it, because we know that if we object to it, it goes straight away?
I mean, I do appreciate the point about frustration, but ultimately, I wouldn't say it's by far automatic that a referral to the Secretary of State means that the application will be granted. So, yeah, I mean, I can only suggest that the council members make the decision based on planning grounds and as they see fit based on those planning grounds and material considerations.
Councillor Symington.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate there's been quite a lot of questions about all of this. I think it obviously is of concern. I actually had a very simple question, and that was you referred to training, and I wondered what additional or alternative training will be required for the members of the Development Management Committee.
Yes, I mean, I think it probably will, I mean, as part of the new planning code of practice, there's the need to set up an annual training program with the, I guess, the limited range of applications going to members. I think it would be looking at which topics would be of interest to members, so whether it's biodiversity net gain or heritage or kind of grey belt analysis. So yeah, kind of analysing what are the themes that come through on strategic major planning applications, and where further support for members would be welcome. So yeah, I'm certainly open equally to receiving suggestions in terms of what members would find helpful in terms of member training.
Yeah, Councillor Madden.
Yes, I just wonder if there would be any interest in, between now and the 31st of October, when we come to DMC meeting, if maybe at the beginning or at the end, it'd be just interesting to see which ones of those would have, you know, going forward, would have come to that meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that's, yeah, I mean, certainly Schedule 1 is quite straightforward. It might be actually a suggestion, quite a useful proposal to have kind of a trial run with the nominated officer and nominated chair, say, well, these 4 are on the agenda based on Schedule 2, but how would we have decided these under the gateway? Yeah, as a trial run under less pressure because they're going to committee anyway. I think that kind of preparation could be useful.
I just love giving you all more work to do, sorry.
Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Chair. Jill, will you be liaising with your counterparts and neighbouring authorities to establish what good practice is and to ensure that decorum isn't an outlier in its scheme of delegation?
Yeah, so I've been in meetings with the Planning Advisory Service and other councils. We've had 4 interesting presentations from other councils. So certainly, yeah, as we go through that timescale, learning best practice, and also trying to ensure perhaps some consistency with neighbouring authorities in how we define significance. I think, yeah, that's a wholly sensible way forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson, did you have another?
Thank you. This is slightly related to my earlier point about sort of transparency and democratic accountability. I would strongly recommend that thought is put to some very, very plain English communications on the website when planning applications when people are searching it, so that it's very clear to residents why things are not coming, why they have less of a say. I think just saying this stuff goes in Schedule 1, this stuff goes in Schedule 2 is more jargonistic than I would say is plain English. So I think that would certainly help, and there'll be training for all councillors, not just DMC, because it's quite a big change in how we operate. But certainly it's help for us, or a very short script or something that we can all use to be able to explain to residents why they can no longer ask for things to go to DMC. But if we do that process where it's very clear that councillors can put in views to the planning officer in writing, then at least we've got that. So just something around communications would be really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the reasons why I was happy for this to be recorded was so that it could then be circulated to members, or all members.
So to confirm, these will be circulated after the meeting, the slides?
And the slides also.
Yeah, perfect. Just a point from me, if I may, it stood out to me in terms of giving more junior members of the team that sort of DMC experience. One to probably pick up outside the meeting, but happy to support in any way I can, because I think that's important. Unless there's any other points. Councillor Patterson, yeah.
If this is, we're going to do a presentation to town and parish councils, aren't you, next month? So presumably you're going to tell them that very few of their concerns will ever be addressed by DMC anymore. They'll just be dealt with by planning officers. Is there a route where you can encourage town parish councils to go to their ward councillor so that it can be considered by the nominated officer if it's a matter of sort of significance locally to them? Yeah. So I'm concerned about the increasing lack of localism here. We talk about delegating things down to a lower level, and this is going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, the meeting in July is our standard monthly meeting that we hold with the town and parish councils. Yeah, again, I do accept, you know, the point you're making in terms of local democracy. And we can look at ways, those kind of practical points in terms of how do ward councillors, as well as the town and parish councils, how do they lobby for applications to be heard through the gateway tests. Whether there's a form that could be filled in and the respective ward councillor or town and parish council could explain why, in their view, it is significant. So yes, these are the kind of practicalities that we need to work through.
Thank you. I think if there are no other points, any final contributions, that will conclude the business of this evening's meeting. Thank you everyone for your participation. I can now declare the meeting concluded and wish you a good evening.